Hello there guys and welcome back to the channel. So it's time to update my tier list. And as always, before we get going, there are the standard disclaimers that this list is a mixture of my personal view of the game and current game relevance and trends. Please do not use this list as a point of argument, but more as a food for thought. Each summoner has different needs and preferences that far outweigh the importance of this list, and rank champions that will help you achieve what you are working towards, and do not blindly follow this or any type of list such as this. On top of it, there is a very good and big reason why I do not add extra icons signifying whether the champion needs to be awakened, whether the champion needs high sig level, and so on and so forth. And the reason for it is because I do want you guys to do your own research and test and practice and ask your questions and learn about the champions. I do not want a single person just taking a look at this list. It's like, oh, KT says that, Kitty Pryde is amazing, so I'm just going to rank her up. And it turns out you hate Kitty Pryde or how she plays or something like that. Also, as I'm talking, I actually do want to make another change to the list, because we are actually going on with a few demotions that are a bit overdue in my opinion, but we're going to discuss that as we go along. Another important thing to note is that even though a champion might not be at the top of the tier list, it by no means the champion is not great or good or worth investing in. It's just like with everything in life, there are champions that are better, there are champions that are slightly less good, and overall, there is always going to be level of subjectivity to these things. Additionally, what I do try is to highlight the champions that are good most often when it matters the most in the most competitive game modes. I personally find some of the champions that I place in quote unquote occasionally useful tier, which is one of the worst tiers to be in. I find them fun. I love them. I enjoy using Terax. I think is great fun. Potentially should bump him up, but since this tier list is focusing on primarily offensive abilities, let's face it, Terax isn't that great offensively. I like him a lot. For instance, khun is one of my favorite champions to play. I do think that, we have more champions like that here that can excel in very specific situations, and hence the use of the term occasionally useful. Champion you might not be running all day everywhere, champion that will virtually never be your go-to champion for any hard quest, but there will be times and situations when even these champions are exactly what you are looking for. For instance, Civil Warrior for a path or two in Act 8, doing great, right? And that's why the names of these tiers. In specific situations, these guys can be great or useful. This tier is for champions that are useful frequently. Quite often you'll find that these are, perhaps one of the better options for specific paths. Rarely the best options for anything, but definitely have their uses and can do things. Especially if you're a newer player, pulling Jubilee, for instance, early on will be super helpful if you learn to use her, and you will probably get a lot of things done because Jubilee has a ton of abilities. If you are at somebody that is, more experienced in the game, probably will not care that much about her. And then the next tier is frequently useful champions. Champions that are very powerful, very often. Plenty of times these will be go-to champions for specific lanes. These champions have everything they need to be the best option for specific scenarios, and they are wildly used. And meta is exactly what it sounds like. Meta is most effective tactics available. So these champions are actually another demotion, I think. These champions in meta tier are the ones that people rely on the most. The ones that people use when going gets tough. These are the champions that will see you through majority of the game modes and perform there. These are the champions that people rely on when failing matters. That is the important distinction there. These are the champions, for Alliance Wars, for Battlegrounds, for hard pieces of content, for Eternity of Pains and stuff like that. These are the champs that you go to when you do not want to get KO'd and mess up, and you want to make sure that you progress through swiftly. And top of the game, again, is exactly how it sounds. Top of the game is a rather exclusive club. I will always try to keep it around 20 or so champions, where it's basically the best of the best. The champions that, as long as you can use them and you have put time and effort to practice them and know how they function, they will not fail you. They will be useful in a ton of different game modes, in a ton of different situations. They are effectively the best champions in the entire game. Right, so what are the changes? There are actually quite a few demotions. Now, I did pull down Mr. Fantastic at the moment because I do think that Mr. Fantastic is taking a slight decline at the moment in his use, and that is another thing that these tier lists, do change and alter based on the type of content we are seeing, based on which game modes are the most important at times, and so on and so forth. So, if Kabam, for instance, is not creating a new Everest content and all of the new story content only has 6 fights and so on and so forth, we have all pretty much forgotten what Aegon does, or well, whether we have one, because we don't use him because there's nothing to do with Aegon. Therefore, he moved from top of the game tier, as he once were when, let's say, Abyss of Legends was one of the most important things in the game, to slowly to the meta tier, to slowly even lower than that, because at the moment he doesn't do anything relevant in the game. You can do stuff with him, but hardly ever he's going to be the best option for many different things. And that is how these champions vary from tiers to tiers. Same story with the Captain America Infinity War. Captain America Infinity War was at the very tippy top of the game, and slowly he's losing his importance due to newer and more powerful science champions coming out, due to necessity of the SIG investment, due to necessity of a team that you can bring in with him in order to access his full utility, and so forth. All of those things are, working against him. So he has been thrown down another tier. So he went from top of the game a few years ago to frequently useful tier. So the only promotion in the top of the game tier is Spot, and Spot is everywhere. Spot is being seen and used and done and played with Battlegrounds and Alliance Wars and virtually everywhere. And I do think that Spot at the moment arguably is the third best Science champion. I do think this is ironically exact top 3 of Science. I think Humatorch is the very top, Scorpion is the second best, and Spot is the third one. That's how it looks like at the moment, and therefore he has been moved up here. Aside from that, Absorbing Man, I think he's proving himself still be where he deserves. Again, we have the Cosmic top 5. That's miles ahead of the rest of the Cosmic champions, in my opinion. And now, any changes here? I moved Magneto down from top of the game because we have seen significant decrease in use of Magneto. And again, new content that Kabam creates often is worked around specifically to safeguard champions against Magneto, should they happen to be metal champs and stuff like that. He's still great, still useful. I used him in one of my last Alliance Wars, but you can't deny the fact that there are more and more nodes that counter him, there are more and more tech champions that counter him, there are less and less bosses in the new content that you want to use him for. And yeah, he's not the most relevant in Battlegrounds either, so definitely not at the moment top of the game champion. Still very powerful, still very good. And I moved Havoc up from frequently useful. You can call me biased on this one, but even before I took mine to rank 5, and there's a good reason why I believe so strongly that Havoc is as good. I definitely noticed that there are more and more Havocs being used in Battlegrounds to begin with. There are more and more Havocs being used in Alliance Wars. There are more and more Havocs popping around pretty much everywhere. So at this point, I do think he is becoming, or is already, fully fledged meta champion. Definitely with the popularity on par with, let's say, Diablo or Null or King Groot or other champions that are in the same list and tier. So I moved Havoc up there slightly. Anybody else moved up here? Not at the moment. Juggy is still meta. And as I said, Mr. Fantastic has been moved down here, which is perfectly fine. And then any other changes here? Not so much. So not too much change here. The frequently useful tier also has an important limit to it. Any and all new champions can land highest at frequently useful tier, in my opinion, until wider player base accesses them, because that exactly is what meta means. Meta is effectively comprised not only of champions that are the most effective in theory, but they are the champions that are most effective in actual usage, that they are the champions people rely on. And with, a couple hundred people having access to, let's say, Kate Bishop, we can't fully judge her and the impact she will have until we actually see it. So whilst I personally believe that Kate Bishop will make her way up to meta tier, let's say in a month or two, because she's going to be available in featured crystals, far more people will have access to her. We will see her used far more, and then we're going to be able to evaluate her properly. So, frequently useful tier is basically as high as I am willing to place champions upon their release, with like maybe very, very few exceptions. And that is where most of the new champions have landed at the moment. We have Shocker here, we have Will Vision, we have Future Ant-Man in here, we have Kate Bishop, Baron Zemo, Sandman, who I also think is going to be useful. And that is because they have yet to become available to the wider player base, and they have yet to show whether they will in fact be staples of the game. I do personally think that Future Ant-Man is going to be very, very strong champion for tech class. Potentially is going to go up as high as like third, fourth spot in tech class. I do have very high hopes for Future Ant-Man. He's one of my personally most wanted champions in the game at the moment. I also have very high hopes for Kate Bishop. I do have her myself, and she's not disappointing so far. I'm very interested to see, how well she does overall over a longer period of time. I think Baron Zemo is solid. Sandman, I think, can swing either way. He might be too slow, so we'll see about that. And Cassie Lang, I've been practicing with her. I do think to get the best out of her, you need to be at a very good skill level with her, but I could potentially see her going up as well. But again, we'll see that soon enough when more people have access to them. Any other major changes here? I don't really think so. So as I mentioned, Sandman is here as well, kind of provisionally. I do think there's a ton in his kit, but I want to see, how well he's put together. There is a demotion here for Corvus. I do think I'm going to put Gore probably up higher, but Corvus definitely is losing his shine. Has been for a long time. Just I faced up to the fact, and Corvus went down to meta tier. Additionally, Iceman buff I think is solid. I don't think he will make it to the meta tier, but I definitely think that he will be a very solid champion in this frequently useful tier. In between his immunities and improved damage output, ability to tank level 3s, stopping away, I think he is at the right place now in frequently useful. He's definitely a playable character that's well worth investing. I was considering taking him up to rank 4. I changed my mind on that. But, we'll see. I'm not ruling it out. I might still take him up. And who else we have in here then? That's changed not much overall. Hawkeye has been demoted at the moment. Hawkeye is not doing too well in general. Atuma is still awaiting his buff. We'll see how impactful that is alongside Shuri, because let's face it, at the moment they're not doing their best. And Strife has been moved down to useful tier as well, because we haven't seen Strife do anything really for quite a while, so this is where he lives right now. And the rest of it, yeah, pretty much remains the same. So, as always, I will leave a link to this spreadsheet in the description below. The champions that are not available as 6 stars, Ultron Classic, Magic, and Quake, have their own little separate list, but, it doesn't really matter too much, does it? Let me know what you guys think and how much you agree or disagree with the list, and what would you change. Always love to listen to your feedback, but meanwhile, I'm gonna catch you guys soon. Bye. Hello there guys, and welcome back to the channel. So we have all the information about